License and registration. Now! The officer's voice sliced through the rolled-down window, sharp, cold, and commanding. No greeting. No explanation. Just authority. Jeremiah Martin's hand moved slowly toward the glove compartment, steady, deliberate. At 70 years old, after surviving 3 wars, he knew how easily sudden movements could get a man killed. I signaled back there, officer. I'm not sure why. Did I ask you to speak? Officer Pete leaned closer, mirrored shades flashing Jeremiah's confused reflection right back at him. Behind him, another cop, name tag reading Bill, circled the old Buick like a wolf testing the weakest part of the herd. I need your license. Registration. Insurance. Can you hear me, or you deaf and just stupid? Jeremiah's breath trembled. His heart, the same one Dr. Patel warned him about just hours ago, pounded hard against his ribs. Here you go, sir, he said quietly, handing over the papers. Pete barely glanced before muttering, You failed to signal back at the intersection. With respect, officer, I did signal. My blinker was. You calling me a liar? Pete's voice sharpened. From behind, Bill laughed, a cruel, cutting sound. Hey Pete, check out the plates. Veteran. Oh great, another old-timer living off his war stories. 3 wars. A lifetime of service. And now this, humiliated on a city street for a crime that didn't exist. Jeremiah's voice stayed calm, even as the crowd began to form. I'm just trying to understand the violation, officer. Pete's hand went to his belt. Step out of the vehicle. I'm sorry, what? Step out of the vehicle. Confusion turned to dread. I haven't refused anything, I just... He's resisting. Pete barked toward the dash cam, toward the watching crowd, toward the narrative he'd already decided on. The door ripped open. Rough hands yanked Jeremiah from his seat, the burgundy blazer, Martha's anniversary gift, twisting beneath the officer's grip. His seatbelt caught, jerking him back. The old man gasped. I have a heart condition, please. Nobody was listening. Bill twisted his arm. Pete's forearm locked around his neck. The crowd shouted, phones lifted, filming everything, capturing nothing that would matter in a world where badges became shields and power meant never having to explain. Stop resisting. Pete yelled again at a man who wasn't moving, who was just trying to breathe. Jeremiah's palm pressed against the cold metal of the patrol car. His silk pocket square slipped free and fell to the asphalt like a flag of surrender. 8 seconds. That's how long the chokehold lasted. By the end of the day, the footage would have 847,000 views. By midnight, the police chief would be watching it with his hands over his face. And 6,000 miles away, Jeremiah's son, Sergeant Dustin Martin, would see the video that would change everything. Because the 2 officers who thought they'd just arrested an old man had no idea they'd just touched a war hero. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. Let's go to the beginning before the chaos. Earlier that day, the first sip of coffee was always the best. Jeremiah Martin held the chipped ceramic mug, the one with world's best dad fading on the side, and let the bitter warmth settle on his tongue. 6:47 in the morning. Right on schedule. The kitchen was silent except for the ancient refrigerator's rhythmic hum and the distant bark of the Hendersons' dog 3 houses down. Through the window above the sink, early November sunlight cut through the bare branches of the oak tree, painting golden stripes across the worn linoleum floor. He'd stood in this exact spot for 50 years. First with Martha beside him, her hair smelling like lavender, her laugh filling the spaces between their comfortable silences. Then with 2 young boys tugging at his uniform before school, their sticky hands leaving prints on everything they touched. Now just him. The silence had weight to it, not quite loneliness, but something close. Something he'd learned to carry like the old shrapnel fragment still lodged near his spine, a reminder that some things never fully heal. The Purple Heart sat in the 3rd drawer down. Wrapped in tissue paper beneath dish towels, Martha had embroidered 30 years ago. He never displayed them. The medals, the commendations, the framed certificates with official seals and signatures from men whose names once meant something. They belonged in that drawer, quiet and unassuming, just like the service they represented. The only military presence visible in his home was the two framed photographs on the mantel. Dustin and Jorge in their dress uniforms, taken on their respective graduation days from basic training. Seeing his boys follow in his footsteps had filled him with a pride he could never quite put into words, and a worry that still kept him up some nights. His phone buzzed against the countertop, dancing across the Formica surface. "Dad." Dustin's voice carried that distinctive hollow quality of a satellite connection from halfway around the world. "You there? Where else would I be at 6:50 in the morning?" Jeremiah smiled despite himself, settling into the kitchen chair that groaned under his weight. "You okay, son?" "I'm fine. Just wanted to check in. Make sure you're eating real food, not just frozen dinners. I had a vegetable yesterday. Pickles on a sandwich don't count." "Who said anything about pickles?" Jeremiah chuckled, but it came out rougher than intended. His son was worried. Had been ever since Martha passed 3 years ago. Both boys had, though Jorge expressed it through biweekly care packages filled with items Jeremiah didn't need. Industrial-strength vitamins, emergency flashlights, enough protein bars to survive a nuclear winter. "I've got an appointment at the VA this morning," Jeremiah continued, watching a cardinal land on the back fence. "Then running some errands downtown. Bank stuff. Nothing exciting. You taking your medications?" "Yes, Mother Hen." "Dad, I'm serious. The heart thing is under control. Dr. Patel says my ticker's doing just fine for a 70-year-old specimen. Strong as an ox," she said. "An old, slightly rusty ox." He kept his tone light, not mentioning the occasional tightness in his chest. The way stairs had become small mountains, the pills that now defined his morning routine. Dustin laughed, and for a moment, the distance between them collapsed. Jeremiah could almost see him. 38 now, salt creeping into his temples just like Jeremiah's had at that age, standing in some prefab structure in a desert whose name he couldn't mention, wearing the same uniform that had once defined Jeremiah's entire existence. "Listen, Dad. I know this time of year is hard. With Mom's birthday coming up next week, Ann." "I'm fine, Dustin. Really." The lie tasted worse than the coffee. "You focus on staying safe over there. That's what keeps me going. Knowing you and your brother are doing what matters." They talked for another 5 minutes. Careful talk, the kind that danced around the real things they both felt. When they hung up, Jeremiah sat in the growing morning light, the phone still warm in his weathered hands. Hands that had once assembled M16s in the dark, that had dragged wounded men through rice paddies, that had held his newborn sons and trembled with the weight of being responsible for something so impossibly fragile. He finished his coffee and moved through his morning routine with the precision of a man who'd spent decades following protocols. Shower. Shave, careful around the scar on his jaw from a piece of shrapnel that should have killed him in '68. Button-up shirt, the blue one. His burgundy blazer, the one Martha had bought him for their 40th anniversary. "You look distinguished," she'd said, brushing lint from the shoulders. "Like someone important." "I'm not important," he replied. "You are to me." The jacket still smelled faintly of her perfume, though he knew that was impossible after 3 years. Some ghosts were more persistent than others. He straightened his pocket square, silk, burgundy, matching the jacket, and studied himself in the hallway mirror. An old man stared back, lines carved deep around tired eyes, but he still stood straight. Still carried himself with the bearing drilled into him 5 decades ago. Keys, wallet, phone. The mental checklist never changed. His silver Buick sat in the driveway, reliable as sunrise, the veteran license plate catching the morning light. He ran his hand along the hood, a habit, checking for frost or dew, and slid behind the wheel. The drive to the VA hospital took 20 minutes through familiar streets. Oak-lined avenues where he'd taught Dustin and Jorge to ride bikes. The park where Martha used to feed the ducks every Sunday. The corner store that used to be AL's Hardware, now a vape shop with neon signs. The city changed while he stayed the same, anchored to memories that grew heavier with each passing year. The VA parking lot was already filling up. It always was. Jeremiah found a spot near the back and made the long walk to the entrance, nodding to the other veterans he passed. You could always tell, something in the posture, the way they scanned their surroundings, the unspoken recognition that passed between men who'd seen things civilians couldn't understand. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Jeremiah checked in at the desk, took his number, 47, and settled into a plastic chair that squeaked under his weight. Around him, men from different wars sat with the same patience, the same worn faces. Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Afghanistan. Different uniforms, different enemies, same sacrifice. Jeremiah Martin? A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. The checkup was thorough. Blood pressure, 138/85. Higher than Dr. Patel liked, but manageable. Weight, still carrying those stubborn 10 pounds. EKG, stable, no significant changes from 3 months ago. Dr. Patel, a woman half his age with kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, listened to his heart, asked about stress levels, and gave him the same speech she always did. Your heart is doing well, but it's been through a lot, Jeremiah. 3 cardiac episodes in 5 years means we need to be careful. Avoid stress. Take your medications. And for heaven's sake, if you feel any chest pain, any at all, you call 911 immediately. Promise me. I promise, document. I mean it. Your body isn't 25 anymore, no matter how much you want it to be. He wanted to tell her he didn't want to be 25 again, didn't want to carry a rifle through jungles or watch boys barely old enough to shave dye in his arms. But he just nodded, accepted his prescription refills, and made his next appointment for February. By 11:15, he was back on the road, heading downtown. The bank was next, routine stuff, transferring money to make sure the automatic payments went through. He'd never been comfortable with computers, but Martha had set everything up before she got sick, and he'd promised her he'd keep things organized. No letting the house fall apart. No becoming one of those widowers who gave up. Downtown was busier now, lunch crowds beginning to fill the sidewalks. Jeremiah found street parking 2 blocks from the bank, a small miracle, and was feeding quarters into the meter when a police cruiser pulled up alongside him. A young officer rolled down his window, and Jeremiah's first instinct was to check his surroundings, inventory what he might have done wrong. Old habits from a lifetime of being careful. "Excuse me, sir?" The officer couldn't have been more than 25, fresh-faced and earnest. "I just wanted to say thank you for your service." He gestured toward Jeremiah's veteran plates. "My grandfather served in Vietnam. He'd be about your age now." Jeremiah felt something warm expand in his chest. "Your grandfather made it home?" "Yes, sir. Still tells stories about his platoon sergeant who saved his life during an ambush outside Da Nang in '68. Da Nang, Jeremiah repeated softly. "I was there. 3 tours. The young officer's eyes widened. "Seriously? Sir, men like you're the reason I wanted to wear this badge. To serve like you did. To make a difference." They talked for another minute, brief, genuine, the kind of interaction that made Jeremiah believe maybe the world hadn't completely lost its way. When the officer drove off with a respectful nod, Jeremiah stood by his Buick for a moment, letting the November sun warm his face. The bank took 30 minutes. Forms to sign, transfers to approve, a pleasant chat with the teller who always asked about his sons. By 12:30, he was back in his car, navigating through downtown traffic toward home. That's when he saw them. 2 police officers standing by their cruiser at the intersection of Madison and 5th. Not the young, respectful officer from earlier. These 2 were different. One was thick-bodied, arms crossed, watching traffic with the intensity of a hunter. The other leaned against their patrol car, mirrored sunglasses reflecting the midday sun, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. They were conducting stops. Jeremiah could see it in their posture, the way they pointed at passing vehicles, the the deliberate casualness that masked focused intent. He'd seen that look before in men on patrol, the predatory patience of those waiting for an opportunity. The light ahead turned yellow. Jeremiah slowed, his turn signal clicking rhythmically as he prepared to make a right turn. Behind him, he glimpsed the patrol car in his rearview mirror. One of the officers pointed. The other nodded. Jeremiah completed his turn, signal still blinking, everything by the book. 50 years of careful driving, of following every rule, of never giving anyone a reason to look twice. The patrol car's lights flashed red and blue. For a moment, Jeremiah thought they were pursuing someone else. He checked his mirrors, his speed, 32 in a 35 zone. His signal was on. He'd done nothing wrong. The siren chirped twice, sharp and insistent. Jeremiah's heart rate picked up, just slightly, just enough to remind him of Dr. Patel's warnings from 3 hours ago. He signaled again, unnecessary but instinctive, and pulled to the curb in front of a row of brick storefronts. Behind him, the patrol car stopped. 2 doors opened simultaneously. In his rearview mirror, Jeremiah watched the officers approach. One on each side, hands resting on their belts in a posture he recognized from 1,000 television shows and a lifetime of watching the world change around him. He rolled down his window, placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen, and waited. The officer appeared at his window, mirrored sunglasses reflecting Jeremiah's own face back at him. No greeting, no explanation, just 4 words that would change everything. License and registration. Now. The officer's voice cut through the window like a blade. No greeting, no explanation, just command. Jeremiah's hand moved toward the glove compartment, slow and deliberate, the way you move when you know sudden movements get people killed. I signaled back there, officer. I'm not sure why. Did I ask you to speak? Officer Pete leaned closer, mirrored sunglasses reflecting Jeremiah's own confused face back at him. Behind Pete, a second officer, name tag reading Bill, circled the Buick like a predator sizing up wounded prey. License. Registration. Insurance. You deaf or just stupid? 70 years old. 3 wars survived. And Jeremiah's hands were shaking as he reached for his wallet. The leather was worn smooth from decades of use, the compartments organized exactly as they'd always been. Driver's license in the front slot. Insurance card behind it. He pulled both free with fingers that didn't quite cooperate, passed them through the window along with the registration he'd retrieved from the glove box. Here you go, sir. He kept his voice steady, kept his eyes forward, kept doing everything Dr. Patel said not to do when his blood pressure spiked. Pete snatched the documents, barely glancing at them before looking back at Jeremiah with undisguised irritation. You failed to signal back at the intersection. With respect, officer, I did signal. My blinker was on for the entire. Are you calling me a liar? Pete's jaw tightened, a vein visible at his temple. You think you know better than a law enforcement officer about what I observed. Jeremiah chose his words carefully. I'm not questioning what you think you saw, sir. I'm just trying to understand the violation because I'm certain my turn signal was activated. Certain. Pete's laugh had edges. You're certain. A 70-year-old man probably can't see past his own dashboard, but he's certain. Bill had completed his circle of the vehicle and now stood near the passenger window, peering inside with barely concealed contempt. He noticed the veteran plate mounted on the front bumper and straightened, his expression shifting to something worse than anger, dismissal. Hey Pete, check it out. Veteran. Bill said the word like it tasted bad. Oh great. Another old-timer living off his war stories. Probably thinks the plate gives him a free pass to break traffic laws. The words hit Jeremiah somewhere deeper than he expected. He'd earned that plate. Earned it in rice paddies and jungle clearings, in firefights that turned boys into corpses and survivors into ghosts. The plate wasn't a trophy. It was a marker, a small acknowledgement of a debt the nation could never fully repay. My service has nothing to do with, Jeremiah began. Your service, Bill interrupted, making air quotes, doesn't mean jack to me, old man. You follow the law like everyone else, or you face the consequences. This isn't 1970. Nobody cares about your war. A small crowd had begun to gather on the sidewalk. 3 people, then 5, drawn by the flashing lights and raised voices. A woman with shopping bags stopped to watch. A teenager on a skateboard pulled out his phone, not yet recording, just ready. Jeremiah forced himself to breathe slowly, felt his heart doing things it shouldn't. "Officer, I understand you have a job to do. I'm just trying to understand what violation I committed. If you could explain." "Step out of the vehicle." Pete's hand dropped to his belt, fingers drumming against the leather. "I'm sorry, what?" "Step out of the vehicle." Each word louder, sharper, carrying across the street to the growing crowd. "You're being detained for failing to comply with a lawful order." "I haven't refused anything, officer. I gave you my documentation. I answered your questions. I just don't understand." "He's resisting." Pete suddenly shouted toward Bill, toward the crowd, toward the dash camera mounted on their patrol car that would later show none of what Pete claimed. "Subject is being combative and refusing lawful commands." "I'm not resisting," Jeremiah said, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. "I'm sitting here with my hands visible. I've done everything you've." His door flew open before he could finish the sentence. Hands, rough, urgent, practiced, grabbed the lapels of his burgundy blazer, Martha's anniversary gift, and yanked. The seatbelt caught, jerking him back like a leash, and for one disorienting second, he was 70 years old and being ripped from his own car in broad daylight for a crime he didn't commit. "Wait, please, I have a heart condition." Nobody was listening. Bill had reached across, unclicking the seatbelt with one hand while maintaining his grip on Jeremiah's arm with the other. The moment the belt released, they pulled him from the vehicle with a force that seemed designed for someone younger, stronger, more dangerous. Jeremiah's feet hit the pavement awkwardly. His knee, the one that had bothered him since a helicopter crash in '69, buckled slightly, and he stumbled against the car door. "He's trying to run," Pete shouted, though Jeremiah's hand was still gripping the door frame, trying to keep his balance. "I'm not. I can't. Please, my heart." Bill twisted his arm behind his back with professional efficiency that came from practice, from doing this before, from knowing exactly how much force you could use before someone complained and exactly how to make it look justified later. The pain shot from Jeremiah's wrist to his shoulder, white-hot and immediate. The crowd was larger now. 7 people. 9. A woman in a business suit had stopped mid-stride, hand over her mouth. The teenager's phone was up now, the black rectangle catching sunlight, recording everything, recording nothing that would matter to men with badges and guns and qualified immunity. "You're hurting him." A woman's voice from the sidewalk, shrill with disbelief. "He's an old man. He wasn't doing anything. Back off or you're next." Bill barked without even looking at her, his attention focused on wrenching Jeremiah's other arm behind his back. Jeremiah's chest tightened, not fear, not yet, but something worse. The kind of pain that started in your sternum and radiated outward like cracks in ice. The kind Dr. Patel had warned him about 3 hours ago in her fluorescent-lit office when she'd said, "Avoid stress, Jeremiah. Your heart can't take it anymore. One more episode could be serious." "I can't breathe," Jeremiah gasped, the words coming out strangled. "Please, I need my medication." "Save it for the judge," Pete snarled, and then his arm locked around Jeremiah's neck. Not tight enough to choke. Not quite. Just tight enough to control. Just tight enough to make him understand who had power here and who didn't. Just tight enough to make every breath a conscious effort. The police car's hood was cold against Jeremiah's face, metal pressing into his cheekbone, his carefully knotted tie twisting against his throat. Above him, the November sky was impossibly blue, indifferent to what was happening beneath it. "Stop resisting." Pete shouted at a man who wasn't moving, wasn't fighting, was just trying to breathe through the pressure in his chest and the confusion in his mind and the absolute certainty that something had gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. Jeremiah's fingers splayed against the hood, searching for purchase, for reality, for some explanation that made sense. His wedding ring, 42 years of wear had made it part of his hand, scraped against the paint. His pocket square, silk, burgundy, matching the jacket, slipped from his breast pocket and fluttered to the asphalt like a surrender flag. "Check his pulse," someone in the crowd shouted. "He said he has a heart condition." "Stay back," Bill roared, still twisting Jeremiah's arm, adding his weight to keep the old man pinned. "This is police business." In the crowd, phones multiplied. 3 cameras. 5. 8. Amanda Chun, waiting for a bus she'd now miss, held her phone steady and captured everything. The unnecessary force, the dismissive cruelty, the silk pocket square on the ground like evidence of dignity discarded. None of the officers noticed the phones. None of them noticed the way Jeremiah's breathing had become shallow, rapid. None of them noticed that his lips had taken on a faint blue tinge. Pete's arm tightened around Jeremiah's throat, just for emphasis, just to make a point, just for 8 seconds that would later be counted and recounted and analyzed frame by frame by people who couldn't believe what they were seeing. 8 seconds. In those 8 seconds, Jeremiah Martin saw his wife's face the day he proposed. Saw Dustin taking his first steps. Saw Jorge graduating from high school. Saw the men he'd served with, the ones who'd made it home and the ones who hadn't. Saw 50 years of life compressed into the space between heartbeats that were coming too fast, too irregular, too wrong. "Can't breathe," he managed to whisper. "Should have thought of that before you resisted," Pete said, and maintained the hold. A young man in the crowd, couldn't have been more than 20, stepped forward, his voice shaking but determined. "Check his plates. He's a veteran. Look at his license plate. He served." Bill glanced toward the front of the Buick, saw the veteran designation, and shrugged. "Don't care if he's George Washington. He breaks the law. He faces consequences." Finally, Pete released his grip. Jeremiah sucked in air, each breath burning, his vision spotting at the edges. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, metal biting into skin that had grown thin with age. "Jeremiah Martin," Pete said, reading from the license he still held, his voice taking on the mechanical tone of official procedure. "You're under arrest for failing to signal, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice." "I didn't resist." Jeremiah's voice was barely audible, each word an effort. "I was complying." "Save it." Bill hauled him upright, and Jeremiah's knees nearly gave out entirely. The world tilted dangerously. The pain in his chest had spread, a crushing pressure that made every breath feel insufficient. They walked him, dragged him, really, toward the patrol car. His burgundy blazer was twisted, one sleeve half pulled down. His shirt had come untucked. His carefully maintained appearance, the dignity he'd worked so hard to preserve, lay in ruins. The crowd had grown to 15, maybe 20 people. All of them watching. All of them recording. All of them knowing they were witnessing something wrong but powerless to stop it. "This is wrong," Amanda Chin shouted, her phone still recording. "You can see he wasn't resisting. He's elderly. He needs medical attention." "Ma'am, I'm not going to tell you again," Bill said, his hand on his pepper spray. "Step back." Amanda stepped back, but she didn't stop recording. They pushed Jeremiah into the back of the patrol car. Pushed, not guided, not assisted, but pushed like he was cargo, like he was nothing. His head hit the door frame. Stars exploded across his vision. The door slammed shut. Through the window, Jeremiah could see his Buick sitting at the curb, driver's door still open, his silk pocket square lying on the ground beside it like a fallen flag. He could see the crowd, their faces etched with shock and outrage, and that particular helplessness that comes from watching injustice and being unable to stop it. He could see Officers Pete and Bill standing beside their patrol car, talking casually, laughing about something, completely unconcerned. And he could feel his heart, his damaged, fragile, 70-year-old heart, beating irregularly against his ribs, each contraction a reminder that Dr. Patel had been right. Stress could kill him, and this stress might just do it. The patrol car pulled away from the curb. Jeremiah watched through the rear window as his car grew smaller, as the crowd dispersed, as normalcy tried to reassert itself over what had just happened. In Amanda Chen's phone, The video was already uploading. Title: Elderly veteran brutalized by police. Must watch. Time posted: 1:47 p.m. Views 0. By 2 p.m., 847 view. By 3 p.m., 15,000 views. By 4 p.m., 284,000 views. But Jeremiah Martin, sitting in the back of a police car with his hands cuffed behind him and pain radiating through his chest, didn't know about any of that yet. He just knew that everything had changed. 5 p.m., the videos multiply. By early evening, it wasn't just Amanda's video anymore. It was 6 videos, 12 videos, 20, different angles, different perspectives, all showing the same thing. The construction worker's footage showed the chokehold from the side, made it clear exactly how long Pete's arm stayed around Jeremiah's neck. 8 seconds, counted and recounted and analyzed frame by frame. The nurse's video captured the audio clearly. Jeremiah's requests for medical attention, ignored 3 separate times. The businessman showed the crowd's reactions, the collective gasp when Jeremiah's head hit the door frame. The teenagers was shaky but caught the final moment. Pete and Bill's fist bump, their laughter, their complete lack of remorse. Each video found its audience. Each one sparked new outrage. Each one added another layer to the story. The story of how 2 officers arrested an elderly veteran for a crime he didn't commit. The story of how they ignored his medical condition. The story of how they joked about it afterward. The story that was now being viewed millions of times, shared thousands of times, commented on by everyone from veterans organizations to civil rights groups to people who just knew injustice when they saw it. Officers Pete and Bill had gone home for the day unaware. They'd grabbed dinner, laughed about their shift, made plans for the weekend. They had no idea their careers were over. They had no idea federal investigators were already being contacted. They had no idea that by morning, their names would be trending nationwide. All they knew was they'd met their quota and taught an old man a lesson. All they knew was they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. None at all. The holding cell smelled like industrial cleaner and decades of human misery. Jeremiah sat on the concrete bench, hands finally uncuffed, but still aching from where the metal had bitten into his wrists. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead with a frequency that made his skull throb. Or maybe that was from hitting the door frame. Or maybe it was his heart, staging its own rebellion after 70 years of mostly faithful service. Each breath felt wrong. Too shallow. Too fast. Like his lungs had forgotten their job. He pressed his palm against his chest. Not because it would help, but because he needed to feel something solid, something real. The pressure was still there, radiating outward from his sternum like cracks in ice. Dr. Patel's voice echoed in his mind. Any chest pain, Jeremiah? Any at all? You call 911 immediately. But 911 had arrested him. Excuse me? His voice came out raspy, weaker than he intended. I need help. Medical attention. Through the reinforced window, he could see Sergeant Patterson at the main desk, a thick-necked man who looked like he'd processed 1,000 drunks and petty criminals and had stopped caring somewhere around number 300. Patterson glanced up from his paperwork with the enthusiasm of someone asked to work overtime. What's the problem? I have a documented heart condition. Coronary disease. I was at the VA hospital this morning. They have my records. I'm experiencing significant chest pain and shortness of breath. Jeremiah kept his voice level, clinical, hoping medical terminology might cut through bureaucratic indifference. I need my medication. It's in my car. Or I need to be transported to a hospital. Patterson studied him for a long moment, then returned to his paperwork. You'll be processed shortly. Medical staff will evaluate you if they determine it's necessary. If necessary? The words came out sharper than Jeremiah intended. I'm telling you it's necessary. I've had 3 cardiac episodes in 5 years. My doctor warned me this morning about stress. What happened out there? He gestured vaguely toward the street, toward the intersection where his dignity had been stripped away. That was extreme stress. Sir. Patterson's voice carried warning now. Everyone who comes through here has some kind of complaint. Back pain, anxiety, migraines, withdrawal. If I called EMS for every person who said they felt bad, we'd never process anyone. You'll survive another hour. Sit down and wait your turn. An hour could be. Sit down. Patterson's voice boomed through the holding area. Or I'll add disorderly conduct to your charges. Your choice. Jeremiah sat. What choice did he have? He was 70 years old, alone in a cage, with no one coming to help. Dustin was halfway around the world. Jorge was somewhere in the Pacific. His wife was 3 years dead. The medals in his drawer at home might as well have been on the moon for all the protection they offered here. Through the window, he could see officers Pete and Bill near the coffee station, laughing about something. Their body language was loose, relaxed, men who'd done their job and done it well, in their own estimation. Every few seconds, one of them would glance toward the holding cells, and the laughter would spike. They were laughing about him. Jeremiah closed his eyes and focused on breathing. In, out, in, out. The technique they'd taught him 50 years ago during combat stress training. The same technique he'd taught young soldiers facing their first firefight, their first casualty, their first realization that they might not make it home. He'd survived 3 wars. He could survive this. He had to. 2:30 p.m., the internet ignites. Marcus Williams sat in his car outside the construction site, lunch break stretching longer than it should, staring at his phone screen in disbelief. He'd shared the video 20 minutes ago. Now it was everywhere. His notifications were exploding. Comments pouring in. Shares multiplying like bacteria in a petri dish. The view counter on Amanda Chen's original post was climbing so fast it looked broken. 15,000 views. 25,000 views. 50,000 views. Marcus opened his veterans group chat. 47 guys he'd served with in Iraq, scattered across the country now but still connected by the invisible thread of shared trauma. Marcus, anyone seeing this? Cops in our city just brutalized an elderly vet. Distinguished Service Cross. Vietnam. This is how we treat our own. The responses came instantly. Tommy_Rodriguez. WTF. Is he okay? J_Stevens. Just watched it. I'm shaking. That could be my dad. Deshaun_Eiley. Already shared it. This is beyond messed up. Kyle_Henderson. Do we know his name? We need to find out if he needs help. Legal fund, whatever. Marcus switched to Facebook. The video had jumped to a veterans page with 47,000 members. Someone had already created a hashtag Justice for the Veteran. He scrolled through the comments, hundreds of them, pouring in faster than he could read. This is disgusting. He served his country, and this is how we repay him. Those cops need to be fired. Today. My grandfather fought in Vietnam. If anyone did this to him, I'd lose my mind. Share this everywhere. Don't let them bury it. Marcus checked the time. 2:33 p.m. Less than an hour since the arrest. The video already had over 100,000 views across multiple platforms. This wasn't just spreading. This was exploding. 3:15 p.m. The news picks it up. Stephanie Rodriguez sat in the Channel 7 newsroom, coffee cooling on her desk, watching the video for the 4th time. She'd been a producer for 11 years. She knew news when she saw it. And this was news. David, she called across the newsroom to their assignment editor. Drop everything. We need to run this now. David Kowalski hurried over, annoyance already forming on his face. He hated being interrupted during budget meetings, but it evaporated the moment he saw her screen. Holy shit, he whispered. It's viral. 2 million views combined across all platforms. Elderly veteran arrested for allegedly failing to signal. Except multiple witnesses say he did signal. Excessive force. Possible medical emergency. This is huge, David. Do we have confirmation on the veteran status? License plates visible in 3 different videos. I've got calls into the VA, but we don't need official confirmation to run the story. The videos speak for themselves. David watched the 8-second chokehold, watched the pocket square fall, watched the crowd's horrified reactions. Get it ready for the 5 o'clock. Lead story. And someone get me a statement from the police department. By 3:30 p.m., Channel 7 had interrupted regular programming. Breaking news. War veteran 70 arrested in controversial traffic stop. The anchor, Jennifer Park, delivered it with appropriate gravitas. A disturbing video circulating on social media shows what appears to be excessive force used during a traffic stop this afternoon. The man, identified by witnesses as a 70-year-old military veteran, was allegedly pulled over for failing to signal. What happened next has sparked outrage across our community and beyond. They played Amanda's video, pixelated the victim's face initially for privacy, but the burgundy jacket was unmistakable. The veteran plates, the 8-second chokehold, the crowd's protests, the pocket square falling like a white flag. Within minutes, every other local station was scrambling to catch up. Officers Pete and Bill sat in the break room, feet up, scrolling through their phones with the casual satisfaction of men who'd done their job and done it well. "Captain can't say shit about our numbers this month," Bill said, taking a long sip of coffee. 20 stops this week alone. "Quality over quantity," Pete replied with a smirk. "That old guy this afternoon? Textbook example of noncompliance. Did everything by the book. Bet he thinks twice before mouthing off to a cop again." They both laughed. Neither one checked social media. Neither one saw the hashtags trending. Neither one noticed the way other officers in the break room were starting to look at them. Glances that lasted a second too long, expressions that suggested something had shifted. For PM, Officer Maria Torres. Maria Torres had been filing paperwork for 3 hours. The worst part of the job, the endless bureaucratic machinery that kept the precinct running. She was down to the last report when the name caught her attention. Jeremiah Martin. She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. That name was familiar. Not from previous arrests, from somewhere else. Somewhere important. Torres pulled up the department database, typed his name. The system ground through its ancient processors, loading slowly. When the results populated, her eyes widened. Jeremiah Martin. DOB. April 15, 1955. Age 70. Military service record. United States Army, 1973 to 1993. Final rank, Sergeant Major Combat Deployments. Vietnam, 3 tours. Grenada, Panama. The decorations list scrolled down her screen. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, 2. Bronze Star with Valor, 3. Purple Heart, 3. Army Commendation Medal with Valor, Combat Infantry Badge. Torres stopped breathing. The Distinguished Service Cross. Second only to the Medal of Honor. Awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. The kind of heroism that meant the difference between men living and dying. She clicked on the citation. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. On March 15, 1968, Sergeant Martin's platoon came under intense enemy fire near Da Nang. Despite being wounded, Sergeant Martin repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to rescue wounded soldiers, personally carrying 7 men to safety under sustained hostile fire. His extraordinary heroism and selfless devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Army. 7 men. He'd saved 7 men. And Pete and Bill had put him in a chokehold for failing to signal. "Oh my God," Torres whispered. She grabbed the arrest report, read it again with new eyes. Failure to signal. Resisting arrest. Obstruction of justice. She grabbed her phone, pulled up Twitter. The hashtag Justice for the Veteran was trending. She clicked it. The video autoplayed. That was Jeremiah Martin, Sergeant Major Martin, Distinguished Service Cross recipient, being thrown against his own car. That was his face pressed into the hood. That was the 8-second chokehold. That was him requesting medical attention. Torres stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. She grabbed the file and ran, through the precinct toward Lieutenant Harris's office. She didn't knock, just burst through the door. "Lieutenant, We have a serious problem. Lieutenant Samuel Harris looked up from his computer, irritation flashing across his face. Torres, you can't just. Sir, the arrest from this afternoon. Jeremiah Martin. Did you see the paperwork? Pete and Bill stop? Yeah, routine traffic. It's not routine, sir. Torres slapped the file on his desk. Look at his military record. Look at what he's earned. Look at what Pete and Bill just did to him. Harris opened the file. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion to something approaching horror. Distinguished Service Cross, Torres said, her voice shaking. 2 silver stars. 3 Purple Hearts. 20 years of military service. He saved 7 soldiers under fire in Vietnam. And we arrested him for failing to signal. We didn't. Pete and Bill. Harris stopped, processed what she was saying. Where is he now? Holding cell 3. Been there for over 2 hours. He requested medical attention. Patterson denied it. He requested. Harris's face went pale. Torres, pull up social media. Right now. Torres already had her phone out. She showed him the trending hashtags, the view counts climbing into the millions, the comments section exploding with rage. Harris watched the video once. That was enough. Get me Chief Raymond on the phone. Now. Sir, he's in budget meetings with. I don't care if he's meeting with the president. Get him on the phone, or go drag him out of that meeting personally. We have a decorated war hero having a potential cardiac event in our holding cell, and 2 million people watching videos of how he got there. Move. Torres ran. 4:30 p.m., Chief Raymond's office. Police Chief Robert Raymond had exactly 4 minutes of peace left before his world collapsed. He sat in his office, reviewing budget proposals, trying to figure out how to do more with less, the eternal challenge of modern law enforcement. His phone was on silent. His door was closed. For 4 precious minutes, he existed in ignorant bliss. Then Lieutenant Harris burst through the door without knocking. Chief, you need to see this. Right now. Sam, I'm in the middle of. Now, sir. Harris's tone left no room for argument. Raymond looked up, saw the expression on his lieutenant's face, and felt his stomach drop. What happened? Harris placed his phone on the desk, pressed play on Amanda Chen's video. Raymond watched in silence. Watched the entire 47 seconds. Watched officers Pete and Bill, his officers, wearing his department's uniform, put an elderly man in a chokehold. Watched them ignore his medical condition. Watched them throw him into the patrol car. Tell me this isn't what it looks like, Raymond said quietly. It's worse, Chief. Harris placed the arrest report on the desk. The man's name is Jeremiah Martin. Sergeant Major, retired. Distinguished Service Cross. 2 silver stars. 3 Purple Hearts. Vietnam veteran. He saved 7 men under hostile fire. The color drained from Raymond's face. Where is he? Holding cell. Has been for 2 hours. He requested medical attention. It was denied. Jesus Christ. Raymond stood, his chair rolling backward. How viral is this? 2 million views combined. Trending on every platform. Hashtag justice for the veteran. Local news is running it as breaking news. National outlets are picking it up. Raymond's phone, still on his desk, lit up with notifications. Then again, and again, calls from the mayor's office, the city council, the governor's communications director. He looked at the video still frozen on Harris's phone, looked at the name on the arrest report, looked at the military decorations list that went on for 3 pages. Get medical to holding cell 3 immediately, Raymond said, his voice deadly calm. Then get Pete and Bill into my office. And Sam? Bring their badges. Chief Raymond's hand shook as he dialed the holding cell desk for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. Patterson, I asked you a direct question. Is Jeremiah Martin still in custody? Yes, sir. He's in cell 3 waiting for. Get him out. Now. Raymond was already moving, grabbing his jacket, pushing past Lieutenant Harris. I'm coming down there myself. And get EMS on standby. Sir, the prisoner hasn't been processed yet. He's not a prisoner anymore. Charges are dropped. Get those cell doors open before I arrive, or you'll be filing for unemployment by morning." Raymond hung up and broke into something between a fast walk and a run. Undignified for a police chief, but dignity was the least of his concerns right now. Behind him, Harris struggled to keep pace. "Sir, what do you want me to tell Pete and Bill?" "Nothing yet. Keep them exactly where they are. If they try to leave, stop them. I don't care how." They descended the stairs to the holding area. Through the reinforced glass, Raymond could see Sergeant Patterson fumbling with his keys, looking confused and nervous. Beyond him, in cell 3, an elderly man in a burgundy jacket sat hunched forward, one hand pressed against his chest. Raymond's stomach turned. The cell door swung open. Raymond stepped inside, and for a moment he simply stood there, a police chief in his pressed uniform, facing a man he'd failed in every way that mattered. "Mr. Martin," he said quietly, "I'm Police Chief Robert Raymond. I am so deeply sorry for what's happened to you." Jeremiah looked up slowly, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and pain. "Am I being released?" "Yes, sir. Immediately. All charges are dropped and will be expunged from your record. But first, I need to know, do you need medical attention? Please be honest with me. I told your sergeant that 2 hours ago." The words landed like a physical blow. Raymond turned to Patterson, who suddenly found the floor very interesting. "We'll address that later," Raymond said, his voice ice. He turned back to Jeremiah. "Sir, I have EMS on the way. I'd like them to evaluate you, and if necessary, transport you to St. Mary's Hospital. Will you allow that?" "Do I have a choice?" "You have every choice, Mr. Martin. You're not under arrest. You're not in custody. You're a free man, and I'm asking, respectfully asking, if you'll let us help you." Jeremiah studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "My chest hurts. Has been hurting since your officers." He stopped, seemed to decide the rest wasn't worth saying. "I know, sir. I've seen the video." "The video?" Raymond realized Jeremiah had no idea. Had been sitting in this cell for 2 hours, alone with his pain, while the entire city, the entire country, watched what had been done to him. "EMS will be here in 3 minutes, Raymond said. "Let's get you somewhere more comfortable while we wait." 4:45 p.m., St. Mary's Hospital. The ambulance ride took 12 minutes. Jeremiah sat on the gurney, oxygen flowing through a nasal cannula, a blood pressure cuff squeezing his arm every 5 minutes. 2 paramedics hovering with the careful attention usually reserved for fragile cargo. "Blood pressure's 168/98, the younger paramedic reported. "Heart rate's 108 and irregular. Respiratory rate elevated. Sir, are you experiencing any numbness in your left arm? Any radiating pain down your jaw? Just chest. Pressure. Like someone standing on it. Okay, we're going to give you some nitroglycerin. It might cause a headache, but it should help with the pressure. Just let it dissolve under your tongue." The pill was bitter. The headache came almost immediately, but the crushing feeling in his chest eased, slightly, but enough to let him breathe a little deeper. St. Mary's emergency room was ready for them. A doctor, Dr. Michelle Kowalski, according to her badge, took over immediately, her movements efficient and practiced. "Mr. Martin, I'm going to run several tests. EKG, troponin levels, chest x-ray. We need to determine if you've had a cardiac event or if this is severe stress-related angina. Either way, you're staying overnight for observation." "My car is being taken care of," Chief Raymond said from the doorway. Jeremiah hadn't realized he'd followed the ambulance. "Your belongings are secure. Your car will be returned to your home. Right now, you focus on getting better." Jeremiah wanted to argue, but exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. He simply nodded and let them work. 5 p.m., the governor's office, state capitol. Governor Mitchell's chief of staff, Lauren Blackwood, stared at her phone with growing horror as the call volume overwhelmed their system. "Governor, we have a situation." Governor Thomas Mitchell looked up from the education bill he was reviewing. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that's trending nationally. A 70-year-old veteran was arrested in the city this afternoon. Excessive force. Possible civil rights violations. The videos have been viewed over 3 million times in the past 3 hours. Mitchell's expression hardened. Show me. Lauren played Amanda Chen's video. 47 seconds that told the whole story. The governor watched in silence. When it ended, he stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Get me the mayor on the phone, then the police chief, then the head of the State Veterans Affairs Office. I want to know exactly what happened, who's being held accountable, and what we're doing to make this right. And Lauren, I want all of that within the hour. Yes, sir. And draft a statement. Something that acknowledges what happened without jumping ahead of the investigation. But make it clear, make it crystal clear, that this is unacceptable. 5:15 p.m. at Forward Operating Base, undisclosed location. Specialist Kevin Ortega burst into the communications tent, tablet in hand, face flushed. Sir, you need to see this. It's about Sergeant Major Martin's kid. Major Flynn looked up from his reports. What about him? Not him, sir. His father. There's a video. It's everywhere. Someone posted it to the unit Facebook group. He handed over the tablet. The video was already playing. Major Flynn watched Dustin Martin's father being arrested. Watched the chokehold. Watched the crowd's horrified reactions. Watched the burgundy pocket square fall to the ground. Where's Martin now? Running PT with his squad, sir. Find him. Bring him here. Now. 5 minutes later, Dustin Martin stood in the communications tent, sweat still cooling on his skin from the 3-mile run, confusion on his face. Sir, you wanted to see me? Major Flynn handed him the tablet without a word. Dustin pressed play. The confusion on his face transformed, first to disbelief, then to recognition, then to something that looked like rage filtered through training and discipline. That's my father, he whispered. That's Dad. That's his car. His jacket. Mom bought him that jacket. He watched the full video. Watched his 70-year-old father, the man who'd taught him to ride a bike, who'd sent care packages every month, who called every week to check on him, get thrown against a car and put in a chokehold. The tablet clattered to the desk. I need to go home. Sir, I need emergency leave. Right now. Already being processed, Major Flynn said quietly. We'll have you on a transport within 6 hours. Martin, I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Dustin pulled out his phone with shaking hands, dialed his brother's number. Jorge answered on the second ring. Please tell me you've seen it, Dustin said. I'm watching it right now. Jorge's voice was tight, controlled. The voice of someone holding fury at bay through sheer willpower. I'm requesting leave too. We need to get home. Is Dad okay? Has anyone heard from him? I don't know. I've been calling his phone. It goes straight to voicemail. Jorge, if something happens to him. It won't. Dad's tough. He survived Vietnam. He'll survive this. But neither brother sounded convinced. 5:30 p.m. at the Pentagon, Arlington. General Marcus Webb was 73 years old, retired for 5 years, but still kept an office at the Pentagon as a special advisor. He was reviewing training protocols when his assistant, Captain Reeves, knocked on his door. General, there's something you need to see. It's about an old friend of yours. Who? Jeremiah Martin. Webb's head snapped up. Jerry, what about him? Reeves showed him the video. General Webb watched in absolute silence. When it ended, his jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. When did this happen? This afternoon, sir. About 3 hours ago. Where's Jerry now? Hospital, from what we can gather. St. Mary's in the city. No serious injuries, but they're keeping him for observation. Webb stood, grabbed his jacket. Get me a car. And get me the phone number for whoever runs that police department. Sir, with respect, might be better to let official channels. Captain Reeves, Jerry Martin saved my life in 1968. Carried me 2 miles through hostile territory with a bullet in his leg. I wouldn't be standing here without him. So when I say get me a car and a phone number, what I mean is, do it now or get out of my way. Reeves was already dialing. 5:45 p.m., Veterans Memorial Hall. Gary Morrison had served with Jeremiah in '72. He'd been home from the VA for 20 minutes when his phone started buzzing with messages from the old unit group chat. He watched the video 3 times before he called his wife. "Helen, I need to go out. Dinner's almost ready. It's Jerry Martin. You remember Jerry? Martha's husband? Something bad happened. I need to make some calls." Within the hour, Gary had contacted 15 other veterans. By 6 p.m., they'd organized. By 6:30, they were standing outside the 5th Precinct in dress uniform, those who still fit into them, holding signs that read, "Veterans deserve respect and justice for Sergeant Major Martin." The local news crews arrived within minutes. Gary gave the first interview, his voice shaking with controlled rage. "Jerry Martin is a hero. A real hero, not the word we throw around carelessly. He saved lives. He served with honor. And this is how we treat him. This is how we treat our veterans? It's disgusting. It's un-American. And someone needs to be held accountable." Behind him, 17 other veterans stood in silent solidarity. The footage would be on the evening news in 30 minutes. 6 p.m., Chief Raymond's office. Officers Pete and Bill sat in the chairs facing Chief Raymond's desk, their initial confusion slowly morphing into unease. "Chief, what's this about?" Pete asked. "We were told to report immediately." "Sit. Don't speak." Raymond's voice was colder than either officer had ever heard. Behind them, Lieutenant Harris closed the door and stood blocking it, not threatening, just present. Raymond turned his computer monitor around. The video was already queued up. "I'm going to show you something," he said quietly. "And then I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to watch carefully." He pressed play. Pete and Bill watched their afternoon traffic stop from Amanda Chen's perspective. Watched themselves pull Jeremiah from his car. Watched Pete's arm lock around the old man's throat. Watched Bill threaten the crowd. Watched all of it, 47 seconds that felt like 47 years. When it ended, Raymond turned the monitor back around. The view counter was visible. "That video," Raymond said, his voice deadly calm, "has been viewed over 4 million times in the past 4 hours. It's been featured on every local news station and is currently being picked up by national networks. The governor's office has called. The mayor's office has called. The FBI has called. There are 17 veterans in dress uniform protesting outside this building right now." Pete's face had gone pale, but looked like he might be sick. "And this," Raymond continued, sliding a document across his desk, "is the military service record of the man you arrested, the man you put in a chokehold, the man whose medical requests you ignored." Bill picked up the document with trembling hands. His eyes scanned down the page, growing wider with each line. "Distinguished Service Cross," Raymond said. "Second highest military decoration in the United States. Awarded for extraordinary heroism. He saved 7 men under hostile fire in Vietnam. 2 Silver Stars. 3 Purple Hearts. 20 years of distinguished service." Pete's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. "So I'm going to ask you a question," Raymond said, leaning forward. "And I want you to think very carefully before you answer." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Do you have any idea who you just arrested?" Chief Raymond picked up the service record, the pages heavy with history that Pete and Bill had been too arrogant to discover. "Let me tell you a story," Raymond said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of judgment. "A story about who Jeremiah Martin really is. Because clearly, you two never bothered to ask." He opened to the first page, dated 1973. March 1973, Fort Benning, Georgia. 18-year-old Jeremiah Martin enlisted 3 days after his high school graduation. Not because he had no other options, but because his father had served in Korea, his grandfather in World War II, and service was what the Martin family did. They showed up when their country called. Basic training instructors noted his natural leadership, his calm under pressure, his willingness to carry more than his share. By the end of advanced infantry training, he'd been selected for accelerated promotion track. By 1974, he was in Vietnam. Raymond looked up from the document. First tour, 1974. He was 19 years old. Most kids that age are worried about college parties. Jeremiah Martin was learning how to stay alive in a jungle that killed better men than him. Pete shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Bill's hands were clenched in his lap. March 15, 1968, Da Nang Province, Vietnam. The ambush came at dawn, the worst time, when men were tired from night watch and the jungle was still dark enough to hide enemy positions. Sergeant Martin's platoon of 23 men was moving through a valley when the first RPG screamed overhead. Chaos. Automatic weapons fire from 3 sides. Men falling, screaming, dying in mud and blood while the jungle erupted with muzzle flashes like angry fireflies. Get down. Martin's voice cut through the panic. Suppressing fire. 3rd Squad, left flank. But the enemy had positioned perfectly. The platoon was pinned, taking casualties, with no clear egress route. Their lieutenant took shrapnel to the chest in the first 30 seconds, dead before he hit the ground. Their radio operator caught a round through the throat. The radio shattered, communication gone. Martin was bleeding from his left leg, shrapnel from that first RPG, but he was moving. Always moving. Perkins, you're hit, stay down. I can't feel my legs, Sarge. I'm coming for you. Stay awake. Talk to me about your girl back home. Martin crawled through mud and hostile fire to reach Private Perkins, threw him over his shoulders in a fireman's carry, and ran. Ran with a bullet wound in his leg and a screaming 19-year-old on his back. Ran toward the tree line while bullets chewed up the earth around him. He made it. Barely. Then he went back. For Corporal Diaz, unconscious with a head wound. For Specialist Thompson, leg shattered, unable to walk. For Private First Class Lee, caught in the open, terrified and frozen. 7 times, Martin went into that kill zone. 7 times, he exposed himself to sustained enemy fire. 7 times, he carried a wounded soldier to safety while the jungle tried to kill him. By the time reinforcements arrived, Martin had saved every surviving member of his platoon. His uniform was soaked with blood, some his, most not. His leg was barely holding him upright. His voice was raw from shouting orders and encouragement. But all 23 men made it out. Some barely, but they made it. The citation for his Distinguished Service Cross read, "For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy." But the men he saved just called him, the man who wouldn't leave us behind. Raymond closed the file, his eyes fixed on Pete and Bill. 7 men. He saved 7 men under sustained hostile fire, with a bullet in his leg. At 19 years old, Bill's voice came out hoarse. We didn't know. I'm not finished. Raymond's tone could have frozen water. 1975 to 1980, multiple operations, classified locations. 2nd tour. 3rd tour. Jeremiah Martin stopped counting the firefights, the close calls, the faces of men who didn't make it home. He was promoted to staff sergeant, then sergeant first class. Not because he wanted the rank, but because men followed him. Men trusted him. Men stayed alive around him. After Vietnam, when most veterans came home and tried to forget, Martin stayed in. Joined Special Operations Advisory roles. Trained Salvadoran forces. Advised Panamanian units. Led rescue operations that never made the news, but saved lives no one would ever count. Grenada, 1983. Panama, 1989. Martin was there, older now but no less capable. The young kid who'd carried 7 wounded men had become the grizzled sergeant major who trained others to do the same. His specialty, combat leadership under fire. His reputation, the man who never lost a soldier he could save. 40 years of service produced over 40 soldiers who owed him their lives. Some directly, pulled from firefights, dragged from burning vehicles, carried through hostile territory. Others indirectly, trained by him, mentored by him, taught to lead the way he led. One of those soldiers was a young lieutenant named Marcus Webb, or who you know now as General Marcus Webb. 1985, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was fresh out of West Point, full of theory and tactics and absolutely no real-world experience. He'd been assigned to Sergeant Major Martin's unit for advanced combat leadership training. "Sir," Martin said on their first day, the word "sir" carrying just enough respect to be proper and just enough edge to establish who actually knew what they were doing. "With respect, forget everything you learned in a classroom. Out here, men die because their leaders hesitate. They die because someone made a decision based on theory instead of reality. My job is to make sure you don't get your men killed." Webb bristled. He was an officer, a West Point graduate. He didn't need some enlisted man telling him. "Lieutenant." Martin's voice went quiet. Dangerous quiet. "I've carried 7 men out of hell. I've written letters to parents explaining why their sons aren't coming home. I've held boys barely old enough to vote while they bled out in my arms. So when I tell you to listen, what I mean is, shut up and learn, or people will die because you were too proud to hear it." Webb shut up. He learned. 3 months later, during a training exercise in Central America, their convoy was ambushed. Real ambush. Real bullets. Real casualties. Webb froze, just for 2 seconds, but 2 seconds was enough to get men killed. Martin didn't freeze. Grabbed Webb by the collar, physically moved him into position, barked orders that cut through the lieutenant's panic. "Webb, suppressing fire. 3rd Squad, flank left. Move or your men die." Webb moved, found his voice, led his men the way Martin had taught him. They all survived. Afterwards, Webb found Martin checking equipment, hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through both of them. "You saved my life," Webb said quietly. "I saved your men's lives," Martin corrected. "You would have figured it out eventually. Just might have cost you some good soldiers first. Don't let it happen again." Webb never did. 30 years later, Marcus Webb wore 4 stars and ran military operations across 3 continents. He'd trained hundreds of officers, led thousands of men, made decisions that shaped military policy. And he never forgot the sergeant major who'd grabbed him by the collar and taught him how to lead. Raymond turned his computer screen around again, pulled up a Pentagon personnel directory, pointed to a name. General Marcus Webb, 4-star general, currently serving as commander of U.S. Special Operations Command, one of the most powerful military leaders in the country. He paused. Trained personally by Jeremiah Martin in 1985, considers him a mentor and a friend. Pete's face had gone from pale to gray, but looked like he might pass out. "So let me make sure I understand what happened today," Raymond continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting. "You two pulled over a decorated war hero. You mocked his service. You ignored his medical condition. You put him in a chokehold. You arrested him on fabricated charges. And you did all of this while being recorded by multiple witnesses." Silence. "And now, that war hero is in the hospital. His sons, both active military, are requesting emergency leave to come home. Veterans organizations are protesting outside this building. The governor is demanding answers. The FBI is opening an investigation. And a 4-star general is probably on a plane right now, coming here personally." Raymond stood. "Badges. Weapons. On my desk. You're both suspended without pay, effective immediately. You'll be hearing from Internal Affairs, the FBI, and probably a few lawyers. Get out of my office." Pete and Bill stood on shaking legs, placed their badges and service weapons on the desk with the careful precision of men handling something that had just become evidence of their own stupidity. They left without a word. 7 p.m., press conference, City Hall. The media room was packed. Every local station, 3 national networks, print journalists, bloggers, citizens with camera phones, all jammed into a space designed for half that many people. Chief Raymond stepped up to the podium, facing a wall of cameras and hostile questions before he'd even begun. "Thank you for coming on short notice," he began, his voice steady despite the chaos. "This afternoon, a 70-year-old veteran, Mr. Jeremiah Martin, was arrested during a traffic stop in our city. Video of that arrest has since gone viral, and I want to address what happened directly." Hands shot up. Questions shouted over each other. Raymond raised his hand for silence. After reviewing all available evidence, including multiple witness videos and department records, I can confirm that Mr. Martin did nothing wrong. The traffic stop was initiated based on a violation that, upon review, did not occur. The subsequent arrest involved excessive force and ignored Mr. Martin's repeated requests for medical attention. The room erupted. Raymond spoke over them. The 2 officers involved have been suspended without pay, effective immediately. They are facing internal investigation, and I have personally requested FBI involvement to determine if federal civil rights violations occurred. All charges against Mr. Martin have been dropped and expunged. Chief Raymond, a reporter from Channel 7. Did you know Mr. Martin is a decorated combat veteran when he was arrested? We did not, but that's irrelevant. Every citizen deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their service record. The fact that Mr. Martin is a highly decorated veteran makes this incident more painful, but the behavior of those officers would have been wrong regardless of who they targeted. What's Mr. Martin's condition? He's currently at St. Mary's Hospital for observation. Early reports suggest he suffered a cardiac event brought on by the stress of the arrest. He's stable, but this situation could have been much worse. Will there be criminal charges against the officers? That will be determined by the ongoing investigation. But I want to be clear. What happened today does not represent the values of this department or this city. We are committed to accountability and reform. The press conference lasted another 20 minutes. Every answer Raymond gave was careful, measured, designed to acknowledge the wrong without admitting liability that could complicate future legal proceedings. But the message was clear. Those officers were done. 7:30 p.m., St. Mary's Hospital, room 412. Jeremiah's room had transformed from a quiet recovery space to something approaching a shrine. Flowers arrived hourly. Cards from veterans organizations. A fruit basket from the mayor's office. Raymond made sure that was sent, hoping it might offset the lawsuit that was inevitably coming. The hospital staff treated him differently now, not just as a patient, but as someone important. A nurse who'd served in Iraq made sure his pillows were arranged perfectly. An orderly who'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan brought him extra blankets without being asked. The head of hospital security, a former Marine, stopped by personally to ensure he had everything he needed. "Sir," the security chief said, standing almost at attention, "if you need anything at all, you tell us. Nobody's going to bother you. Nobody's going to upset you. You have my word." Jeremiah, exhausted and overwhelmed, just nodded. "Thank you." At 7:45 p.m., 2 men in suits arrived. VA representatives, carrying briefcases and concerned expressions. "Mr. Martin, I'm Daniel Reeves from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We wanted to check on you personally and ensure you're receiving proper care. We've coordinated with the hospital. All your medical expenses will be covered. If you need legal representation, we can connect you with attorneys who specialize in civil rights cases. If you need counseling, we have resources. Whatever you need, sir. I just want to go home. We understand, sir. But the doctors want to keep you overnight. Standard protocol after a cardiac event. We'll make sure you're comfortable." They stayed for 15 minutes, taking notes, assuring him that the VA was monitoring the situation, that someone would check on him daily until this was resolved. After they left, Jeremiah lay back against his pillows and closed his eyes. The pain in his chest had subsided to a dull ache. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Outside his door, voices murmured, nurses, visitors, the constant background noise of a hospital at night. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello. Jerry. That you?" The voice was older now, rougher, but unmistakable. Jeremiah sat up so fast the monitors beeped in protest. "Marcus." "Yeah, brother. It's me. I just saw what happened. I'm in D.C. right now, but I'm catching the first flight out. Should be there by morning." "Marcus, you don't need to." "Like hell I don't." General Webb's voice carried the authority of command and the warmth of old friendship. "You saved my life 30 years ago. You think I'm not going to show up when some punk cops put you in the hospital? Jeremiah felt something tight in his chest. Not pain this time, but emotion he hadn't let himself feel in 3 years. Not since Martha died. The feeling of not being alone. I'm okay, Marcus. Really. Just tired. I know you are. But you're not doing this alone. I'm on my way, brother. You just rest. We'll handle everything else. The call ended. Jeremiah set the phone down and stared at the ceiling tiles, processing everything that had happened in the last 6 hours. He'd been arrested, humiliated, nearly had a heart attack. But now the world was responding. Veterans were protesting. The governor was involved. A 4-star general was flying across the country to check on him. The hero they didn't know had been revealed. And the reckoning was just beginning. The next day morning, the first visitor arrived at 6:47 a.m. Jeremiah was awake, hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of consciousness while nurses checked vitals every 2 hours, and the hallway outside maintained its constant hospital hum. The knock was soft, hesitant. "Mr. Martin? May I come in?" A young man stood in the doorway, couldn't have been more than 30, wearing an army uniform with specialist rank. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept, or both. "I'm sorry to bother you so early, sir. I'm Specialist Nathan Pierce. I heard what happened. I needed to see if you were okay." Jeremiah studied him, confused. "Do I know you?" "No, sir. But my father does. Corporal James Pierce. You saved his life in Danong, March 1968. He's told me that story my whole life, about the sergeant who carried him 2 miles with a bullet wound. When I saw the video yesterday, I recognized your name from Dad's stories." The young man's voice cracked. "Dad died 2 years ago. Cancer. But before he passed, he made me promise something. He said if I ever met Sergeant Major Martin, I should tell you thank you. That you gave him 40 more years. That he got to meet my mother, raise 3 kids, see his grandchildren, all because you didn't leave him behind." Jeremiah felt his throat tighten. James Pierce. He remembered, a kid from Ohio, barely 19, bleeding from a stomach wound, crying for his mother while Jeremiah dragged him through mud and enemy fire. "Your father was a good soldier," Jeremiah said quietly. "He was a good father too. Because of you." Nathan wiped his eyes. "When I saw what those cops did to you, sir, it made me sick. You're a hero. You should be treated like one." "I'm not a hero, son. I just did my job." "That's exactly what Dad always said." Nathan smiled through his tears. "I'm stationed at Fort Meade. My CO gave me leave to drive down here. I just wanted you to know, you're not alone in this. There are people who remember. People who care." After Nathan left, Jeremiah sat in silence, processing. He'd spent 50 years trying to forget Vietnam, trying to move past the nightmares and the guilt of the men he couldn't save. He'd never expected the men he did save would remember. 2 p.m., General Webb arrives. The commotion in the hallway was subtle but unmistakable. Voices suddenly more respectful, movements more careful, the particular energy that accompanied serious authority. General Marcus Webb entered the room in full dress uniform, for stars gleaming on his shoulders, ribbons covering his chest. Behind him, a young aide carried a briefcase and looked slightly terrified to be in the presence of both a general and a legend. "Jerry." Webb's voice was warm despite the formal setting. "You look like hell." "Marcus." Jeremiah actually laughed. "You're one to talk. When did you get so old?" "Same time you did, I imagine." Webb approached the bed, and for a moment, the 4-star general disappeared, and there was just Marcus, a young lieutenant who'd frozen in his first firefight, who'd been grabbed by the collar and taught how to lead. They gripped hands, not a handshake, but the warrior's clasp, forearm to forearm, the way soldiers greeted brothers. "How you doing, really?" Webb asked quietly. "I've been better, but I'm still here." "That's because you're too stubborn to die. Always were." Webb pulled up a chair, ignoring the fact that generals didn't typically sit in hospital rooms. "I've been making calls. FBI's involved. Department of Justice is watching. This isn't going away, Jerry. Those cops are done. I don't want revenge, Marcus. Not revenge. Accountability. There's a difference. Webb leaned forward. You spent your whole life serving this country, training men like me, saving lives. You deserve better than what happened, and I'm going to make damn sure you get it. Dustin and Jorge watched this interaction with something approaching awe. Their father, who they'd always known was special, being treated as an equal by one of the most powerful military leaders in the country. How'd you get here so fast? Jeremiah asked. Commandeered a military transport. Told them it was urgent command business. Webb grinned. Technically true. You're my commanding officer. You taught me everything I know. That makes this very urgent. They talked for an hour. About old times. About men they'd served with, some still alive, many not. About leadership and sacrifice and the cost of service that civilians could never fully understand. Eventually, Webb stood. I need to go talk to your police chief. Make sure he understands the full picture. But Jerry, I'll be back tomorrow. And every day until this is resolved. You don't go through this alone. After he left, Dustin looked at his father with new eyes. Dad, I knew you served. I knew you had medals. But I never understood. You trained a 4-star general. I trained a lot of people, son. Marcus just happened to make something of himself. No, Jorge said quietly. He made something of himself because you showed him how. Just like you showed us. 4 p.m., discharge and homecoming. Dr. Kowalski signed the discharge papers with reluctance. I still think you should stay another night. But your vitals are stable, and frankly, I think going home might be better for your stress levels than staying here with all these visitors. Jeremiah dressed slowly in the clothes someone had retrieved from his house. Not the burgundy jacket, that was evidence now, but a simple button-down and slacks. His sons hovered nearby, ready to help but knowing their father well enough not to offer unless asked. The wheelchair was hospital policy. Jeremiah hated it, but didn't argue. As they left through the main entrance, something unexpected happened. The lobby was full of people. Hospital staff lined the hallways. Veterans in uniform stood at attention. Ordinary citizens held signs. Thank you for your service, and we stand with you. As the wheelchair passed, people began to clap. Slowly at first, then building. A standing ovation for a man who just wanted to go to the bank. Who'd done nothing wrong. Who'd been arrested and humiliated and nearly killed. But who was finally being seen. A young girl, couldn't have been more than 8, stepped forward with a drawing. Jeremiah in his burgundy jacket, surrounded by hearts and American flags. My teacher told us what happened. This is for you. Jeremiah took the drawing with shaking hands. Thank you, sweetheart. The applause followed him all the way to the car. Dustin drove, Jorge in the passenger seat, Jeremiah in the back with the little girls drawing on his lap. Dad. Dustin caught his father's eyes in the rearview mirror. You okay? Jeremiah looked at the drawing. At his sons. At the world outside the window that had shifted somehow in the past 24 hours. Yes, son. I think I am. 2 weeks later. The conference room at City Hall felt smaller than it was, packed with cameras, journalists, city officials, and the weight of decisions that would reshape the police department for years to come. Chief Raymond stood at the podium, flanked by the mayor on one side and the newly appointed independent oversight director on the other. Behind them, displayed on a large screen, were the results of the federal investigation that had consumed the past 14 days. Thank you all for coming, Raymond began, his voice steady despite the exhaustion visible in his eyes. 2 weeks ago, a grave injustice occurred in our city. Today, we're here to discuss the findings of a comprehensive investigation and the actions we're taking to ensure nothing like this happens again. He clicked to the first slide, a summary of the FBI's civil rights investigation. Former officers Pete Dalton and Bill Crawford have been terminated from the police department. Additionally, they are facing federal charges of civil rights violations under Title 18, Section 242. They face charges of deprivation of rights under color of law, falsifying police reports, and assault. If convicted, they face up to 10 years in federal prison. A reporter's hand shot up. Raymond nodded. Chief, the body camera footage was released yesterday. It shows the officers fabricated the initial traffic violation. How did this happen? The investigation revealed a pattern of behavior. Over the past 18 months, Officers Pete Dalton and Bill Crawford conducted 47 traffic stops that showed similar patterns: fabricated violations, aggressive escalation, targeting of elderly and minority drivers. They were working a quota system, prioritizing numbers over legitimate law enforcement. Another reporter: "What about Sergeant Patterson, who denied Mr. Martin medical attention?" Sergeant Patterson has been demoted and reassigned to desk duty pending additional review. He failed in his fundamental duty of care for individuals in our custody. That failure nearly cost Mr. Martin his life. Mayor Richardson stepped forward, her expression grave. "I want to be clear. What happened to Jeremiah Martin was not an isolated incident. It was symptomatic of systemic failures in our department. Failures of training, supervision, and accountability. We are implementing comprehensive reforms." She outlined the changes: mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, body camera footage review protocols, an independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power, revised use of force policies, and a complete overhaul of the traffic stop procedures. These reforms are named the Martin Protocols, Mayor Richardson continued, so that every officer in this city remembers what happens when we forget that our job is to protect and serve, not to intimidate and arrest. Across town, the Martin home. Jeremiah sat in his kitchen, the same kitchen where he'd drunk coffee that Tuesday morning 2 weeks ago when his life had been simple and quiet and ordinary. Now, the kitchen table was covered with letters. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They arrived daily, from veterans, from schoolchildren, from people who'd seen the video and felt compelled to write. Some contained donations to cover medical expenses he didn't need covered. Some contained apologies from strangers who felt responsible for a broken system. Some were just notes saying, "Thank you, we see you, you matter." Dustin walked in, fresh from his morning run, still in his PT gear. He'd extended his emergency leave. Jorge was staying at a hotel downtown, both sons unwilling to leave their father alone yet. "More mail?" Dustin asked, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. 3 bags this morning." The postal worker apologized for how much there was. Dustin sat down, picked up a random envelope. Inside was a letter from a woman in Oregon whose grandfather had served in Vietnam. She'd enclosed a check for $500 with a note: "Please use this for whatever you need. My grandfather died before anyone thanked him properly. Let me thank you instead. Dad, you need help managing all this. The donations alone, there must be $50,000 here. I don't want the money. I know, but these people want to give it. They need to give it. Maybe you can set up a fund for other veterans who face legal issues? Turn something bad into something good." Jeremiah considered this. Martha would have liked that idea, taking pain and transforming it into purpose. "The Jeremiah Martin Veterans Legal Defense Fund," Dustin suggested. "Help other vets who get caught in situations like yours. Pay for lawyers, court costs, whatever they need. I'm not dead yet, son. Seems premature to name things after me. You're alive because you're stubborn. Might as well put that stubbornness to good use." The trial preparation. Attorney Sarah Brennan sat across from Jeremiah in her downtown office. Legal documents spread across the conference table like a paper minefield. "Mr. Martin, I want to be straight with you about what we're facing. The criminal charges against Dalton and Crawford are proceeding. That's the federal government's case, not ours. What we're discussing today is your civil suit against the city and the police department. I'm not sure I want to sue anyone. With respect, sir, this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and compensation. You suffered a cardiac event. You incurred medical expenses. You experienced severe emotional distress. The city's insurance will cover the settlement. This won't come out of taxpayer pockets for vital services." Dustin leaned forward. "Dad, Sarah's right. If you don't hold them accountable, what's to stop this from happening to someone else? The reforms are good. A lawsuit is better. It's the language they understand, financial consequences for civil rights violations. Jeremiah looked at the documents, at his son, at this attorney who'd offered to represent him pro bono because, as she'd said, some cases are about more than money. They're about making a statement. If I do this, Jeremiah said slowly, the money doesn't go to me. It goes to the fund Dustin suggested. For other veterans. Sarah smiled. I think we can make that work. Though you should keep enough to cover your actual damages and expenses. Fine. But the rest goes to help others. You're a better man than most, Mr. Martin. I'm just tired of being angry. Might as well do something useful with it. Channel 7 interview. Jennifer Park had requested this interview 3 times. Jeremiah had declined twice. But Dustin had convinced him. Tell your story, Dad. On your terms. Before someone else tells it wrong. The cameras were set up in Jeremiah's living room. Jennifer sat across from him, professional but warm, clearly moved by the opportunity to interview someone she'd been covering for 2 weeks. Mr. Martin, thank you for speaking with us today. Call me Jeremiah, please. Jeremiah, it's been 2 weeks since your arrest. How are you doing? I'm processing. That's the word my son uses. Processing what happened. Processing that the whole country watched the worst day of my life. Processing that something so terrible somehow turned into something. I don't know. Meaningful, maybe. You've become a symbol for veterans' rights, for police reform, for dignity in the face of injustice. How does that feel? Uncomfortable, honestly. I didn't do anything brave. I just tried to go to the bank. The people who did something brave were the witnesses who recorded what happened. The veterans who showed up to protest. The journalists who told the story when it would have been easier to ignore it. The officers who arrested you are facing federal charges. How do you feel about that? Jeremiah was quiet for a moment. I don't celebrate anyone's life being ruined. But actions have consequences. They made choices. Those choices harmed me, could have killed me, and apparently harmed dozens of other people before me. They need to face accountability. Do you forgive them? I'm working on it. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It just means I'm not going to let anger poison the rest of my life. I've seen what happens when people carry hate too long. It destroys them from the inside. I survived 3 wars. I'll be damned if I let 2 bad cops destroy my peace. What do you want people to remember from this story? Jeremiah looked directly at the camera. I want people to remember that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Whether you're a veteran or not. Whether you've earned medals or not. Basic human decency shouldn't depend on your service record. It should be the default. That's what I want from this. Not sympathy. Not hero worship. Just basic decency for everyone. The interview would air that evening. By morning, the clip of Jeremiah saying, I'll be damned if I let 2 bad cops destroy my peace, would be shared 800,000 times. The Veterans Hall meeting. The Veterans Memorial Hall was packed. Standing room only, folding chairs brought out from storage, people sitting on the floor. Gary Morrison stood at the podium, looking out at over 200 veterans from every conflict since Korea. Brothers and sisters, we're here tonight to honor one of our own and to discuss what comes next. Jerry Martin couldn't be here. He's still recovering, but he asked me to read this statement. Gary unfolded a piece of paper, Jeremiah's handwriting shaky but legible. To my fellow veterans, thank you for standing with me. Thank you for reminding me, reminding all of us, that service doesn't end when we take off the uniform. We serve by looking out for each other, by demanding better from the systems meant to protect us, by refusing to let our sacrifices be forgotten or diminished. But I want to ask something of you. Don't let my story be just about me. There are veterans facing injustice every day. Homelessness, medical neglect, legal troubles they can't afford to fight. If this moment means anything, let it mean we commit to helping them. Not just now, while the cameras are watching, but 6 months from now. 6 years from now. I'm establishing the Veterans Legal Defense Fund with the settlement money from my lawsuit. But money isn't enough. We need volunteers. We need mentors. We need people willing to show up when another veteran needs help. That's the legacy I want from this. Not my name on a reform policy. Not my face on the news. Just all of us taking care of each other the way we were trained to do. Leave no one behind. Not on the battlefield. Not in civilian life. Not ever. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for making me remember that I'm not alone in this fight. Respectfully, Jeremiah Martin, Sergeant Major, U.S. Army, retired. The hall erupted in applause. Veterans stood, some wiping tears, others nodding in fierce agreement. Gary waited for the noise to settle. So here's what we're going to do. We're establishing volunteer committees, legal assistance, housing support, mental health outreach, job placement. We're going to be the support system we wish we'd had when we came home. All in favor? Every hand went up. Then let's get to work. The Martin home. Jeremiah sat on his back porch, wrapped in a blanket against the November chill, looking up at stars that seemed brighter than they had in years. Inside, he could hear Dustin and Jorge talking quietly, their voices a comforting murmur. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he'd learned to answer them now. They were rarely bad news anymore. Mr. Martin? This is Pete Dalton. Jeremiah's hand tightened on the phone. The officer who'd arrested him, who'd put him in a chokehold, who'd mocked his service. Why are you calling me? I wanted to apologize. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I needed you to hear it from me. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About my job. About what it means to be a police officer. Jeremiah was silent, processing. I'm going to prison, Pete continued. My lawyer says 2 to 5 years if I take a plea deal. And I deserve it. But before I go, I needed to tell you I'm sorry. And I needed to tell you that what you said in that interview, about not letting hate poison you, that meant something to me. You had every right to hate me. But you didn't. That's real strength. The kind I always thought came from being tough. But I was wrong about that too. Mr. Dalton, Jeremiah said finally, I accept your apology. Not because what you did was okay, but because I meant what I said. I'm not carrying hate anymore. You'll face your consequences. You'll do your time. What you do after that, that's up to you. Thank you, sir. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The call ended. Jeremiah sat in the darkness, feeling something shift inside him. Not forgiveness exactly. That would take longer. But maybe the beginning of it. The first step toward letting go. Inside, his sons laughed about something. The sound carried through the open window, warm and alive. Jeremiah smiled. He'd survived 3 wars and 1 arrest. And he was still here. Still standing. Still himself. 6 months later, May 2024. Spring had transformed Jeremiah's backyard into something Martha would have loved. The azaleas she'd planted 15 years ago bloomed in brilliant pinks and purples. The grass was thick and green. Birds sang in the oak tree where a tire swing had once hung when the boys were small. Jeremiah sat at the patio table, reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing grant applications for the Veterans Legal Defense Fund. In 6 months, the fund had grown beyond anything he'd imagined. Donations from across the country, corporate matching programs, a website that processed 50 applications a week from veterans needing legal assistance. They'd helped 43 veterans so far. Wrongful eviction cases, employment discrimination, family court battles. Each file represented a person who might have given up without help. Each success felt like a small redemption. Dad. Jorge appeared in the doorway, holding his phone. The documentary team is here. You ready? Right. The documentary. Jeremiah had forgotten, despite Jorge reminding him 3 times this week. Director Michael Chun, no relation to Amanda, they'd checked, had been filming for 4 months. What started as a short piece about the arrest had evolved into something larger. A feature-length documentary about veterans, justice, and what it means to serve after the uniform comes off. Let them in, Jeremiah said, setting down his reading glasses. But tell them I'm not doing any dramatic reenactments. I'm too old for that nonsense. 10 a.m., the interview. Michael set up his camera in the living room, positioning Jeremiah in the chair by the window where natural light made everything look softer, kinder. Just talk naturally, Michael said. We're almost done with filming. This is the final interview, your reflections 6 months later. How you're doing, what you've learned, what you hope people take from all of this. The camera started rolling. So, Jeremiah, it's been 6 months since your arrest. Take me back to that morning. What were you thinking when you woke up that day? I was thinking about coffee, Jeremiah said with a slight smile, and whether I should have oatmeal or eggs for breakfast. Normal things. Boring things. I had a VA appointment, some errands. It was supposed to be a completely ordinary day. And now, 6 months later, your story has been viewed by millions. You've met with senators, police chiefs, the governor. You've established a fund that's helped dozens of veterans. Does any of this feel real? Not really. I still expect to wake up and find out it was all some strange dream. But then I check my email and there are 20 grant applications waiting, or someone recognizes me at the grocery store, and I remember, this is my life now. Whether I like it or not. Do you like it? Jeremiah considered. Parts of it. The fund, that makes me proud. Knowing we're helping people who need it. But the attention, the recognition, that still makes me uncomfortable. I didn't do anything heroic that day. I just tried to survive something that shouldn't have happened. The officers who arrested you, Pete Dalton received 2 years in federal prison. Bill Crawford got 18 months. They were sentenced 3 months ago. How did you feel watching that? Sad mostly. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Just sad that 2 men threw their lives away because they forgot the most basic rule of the job. Treat people with dignity. Their families are suffering now. Their children. That doesn't make me feel good. You received a letter from Pete Dalton. Can you talk about that? Jeremiah nodded slowly. He wrote to me from prison. Apologized again. Said he's using his time to think about what kind of man he wants to be when he gets out. Asked if I'd be willing to speak with him someday about the military, about service, about what it means to protect people instead of intimidate them. I haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking about it. That's remarkable, that you'd even consider it. Hate is easy. Forgiveness is hard. I spent too many years carrying anger from Vietnam. Anger at myself, at the government, at the war itself. That anger didn't help anyone. If I can help someone else not make the same mistakes, maybe that's worth a conversation. Current day, at the police academy graduation. Chief Raymond had invited Jeremiah to speak at the police academy graduation. Jeremiah had declined twice before finally accepting, persuaded by General Webb, who'd said, "Jerry, if you don't tell them your story, they'll never understand what they're supposed to protect." The auditorium held 120 graduating cadets, their families, department officials, and the media, always the media now, documenting everything. Jeremiah stood at the podium in his burgundy jacket, the one from that day, cleaned and repaired, worn deliberately as a reminder. "I'm not going to tell you how to do your job," he began, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Chief Raymond and your instructors have spent months teaching you that. What I'm going to tell you is why your job matters, and why forgetting that nearly cost me my life." He told them about the traffic stop. Not the viral video version, the personal version. What it felt like to be 70 years old and suddenly afraid of the people meant to protect him. What it felt like to beg for medical attention and be ignored. What it felt like to have decades of dignity stripped away in 10 minutes. "I served 20 years in the Army," Jeremiah continued. "Earned medals, trained soldiers, did things I'm proud of and things that still keep me up at night. But when I was on the hood of that police car with an arm around my throat, none of that mattered. In that moment, I wasn't a veteran or a hero or anything special. I was just a scared old man who didn't understand what was happening." The room was silent. Some cadets looked uncomfortable. Good. Comfort was the enemy of learning. Here's what I want you to remember. Every person you interact with is someone's father, mother, son, daughter. They have a story you don't know, a history you can't see. And your job, your sacred responsibility, is to treat them with dignity regardless of what you think you know about them. He paused, looking across the rows of young faces. The officers who arrested me made assumptions. They saw an elderly man and decided he didn't deserve respect. They saw veteran plates and mocked them. They heard my medical concerns and dismissed them. Every decision they made came from a place of arrogance and contempt. And those decisions destroyed their careers, nearly killed me, and shook public trust in everyone wearing that uniform. But here's the thing, I don't believe most officers are like them. I believe most of you sitting here today genuinely want to help people, want to make your communities safer, want to do good. So let my story be a warning. Good intentions aren't enough. You need humility. You need empathy. You need to remember that the badge is a responsibility, not a permission slip for authority. He concluded simply, treat people the way you'd want your grandfather treated, your mother, your child, because someday that person you're pulling over might be one of them, and you'll have to live with how you handled it. The applause started slowly, then built. Not the standing ovation from the hospital, but something more meaningful, the quiet acknowledgement of truth received and understood. Afterwards, 3 cadets approached him. A young woman, barely 25, said, "Sir, I promise you, I'll remember this. I'll remember you. And I'll do better. That's all I ask," Jeremiah replied. 6 p.m. of the same day, the memorial service. Every May, the Veterans Memorial Hall held a service for fallen soldiers. This year felt different. The hall was packed, triple the normal attendance, media cameras in the back, dignitaries in the front row. General Webb sat beside Jeremiah, both men in dress uniform. Jeremiah's from 1993, still fitting reasonably well despite the decades. Gary Morrison delivered the opening remarks, reading names of local veterans who'd passed in the last year. 37 names. 37 families grieving. 37 stories that deserved to be remembered. When Gary finished, he looked toward Jeremiah. "We have someone special here today. Someone who reminds us why this service matters. Sergeant Major Martin, would you come forward?" Jeremiah hadn't prepared anything. Didn't know he'd be asked to speak. But he rose slowly, made his way to the podium, and looked out at the assembled crowd. "I've been to too many of these services," he began quietly. Stood at attention while names were read. Names of friends, brothers, soldiers I trained who didn't come home. Each name represents not just a life lost, but futures stolen. Families fractured. Dreams unrealized. He gripped the podium, steadying himself against emotion. What happened to me 6 months ago, that brought a lot of attention to veterans' issues. People started caring, paying attention, wanting to help. And that's wonderful. But I need you to understand something. Veterans don't need attention when something bad happens to us. We need support every single day. The veteran sleeping under a bridge. The one struggling with PTSD. The one who can't find work because employers see military service as a liability instead of an asset. Those veterans need you. Not when they're trending on social media, but on random Tuesdays when nobody's watching. He looked at the names on the memorial wall. Bronze plaques honoring the fallen, permanently etched into marble. These men and women gave everything. The least we can do is take care of the ones who came home. Not just honor them at ceremonies. Not just thank them for their service in passing, but actually show up, actually help, actually remember that service doesn't end with the uniform. I was fortunate. When I needed help, people showed up. But not every veteran has that. So here's what I'm asking. Take the energy, the attention, the anger people felt about what happened to me, and direct it toward helping veterans who need it. Volunteer. Donate. Mentor someone. Just don't let this moment pass, and then forget. He stepped back from the podium. General Webb stood, began to clap. The entire hall rose, applause echoing off the walls, not for Jeremiah specifically, but for the message. For the reminder that awareness must lead to action. 9 p.m., back at the Martin home. The house was quiet again. Dustin and Jorge had returned to their units 2 months ago, though they called daily and visited monthly. Jeremiah sat in his kitchen, The same kitchen where this had all begun, drinking coffee despite the late hour. His phone buzzed. A text from Amanda Chun, the woman who'd recorded the original video. "Mr. Martin, I just wanted you to know, I'm graduating with my social work degree next month. Partly because of what happened. Because I realized that witnessing isn't enough. You have to act. Thank you for inspiring me." Jeremiah smiled, typed back, "Congratulations. The world needs more people willing to act. Proud of you." Another text, this one from specialist Nathan Pierce, the son of the soldier Jeremiah had saved in '68. Dad's grave marker was updated today. Added a line, "Saved by SGM Jeremiah Martin, March 1968. I know he'd want you to know. Thank you for giving me 40 more years with him." Jeremiah's eyes blurred. He set the phone down, looked around his kitchen. At Martha's curtains, still hanging despite being slightly faded. At the pictures of his sons on the refrigerator. At the coffee mug that said "World's Best Dad." 6 months ago, he'd sat in this same spot, drinking coffee, planning an ordinary day. Now everything was different, but also the same. He was still Jerry Martin. Still a widower. Still a father. Still a veteran. The arrest hadn't changed who he was. It had just forced the world to see him. And maybe that was the real legacy, not the reforms or the fund or the documentary, but the reminder that everyone has a story. Everyone deserves dignity. Everyone matters. His phone buzzed one more time. General Webb. "Jerry, just landed back in D.C. Thanks for today. You spoke truth to power, something you've never been afraid to do. The world's better because you're in it. Don't let anyone tell you different. Marcus." Jeremiah finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, placed it in the dish rack exactly where Martha had always insisted it go. Some routines were worth keeping. Some traditions mattered. Tomorrow, he'd review more grant applications. Maybe visit the Veterans Hall. Definitely call his sons. The work continued. The mission wasn't over. But tonight, in his quiet kitchen, with spring air drifting through the window and stars visible above the oak tree, Jeremiah Martin allowed himself a moment of peace. He'd survived 3 wars. He'd survived 1 arrest. And he'd turned pain into purpose. That was enough. That was everything. Epilogue, text on screen. The Veterans Legal Defense Fund has helped over 200 veterans in its first year, providing legal assistance, housing support, and advocacy. The Martin Protocols were adopted by 47 police departments across the country, leading to a documented 34% reduction in use of force incidents during traffic stops. Officers Pete Dalton and Bill Crawford completed their prison sentences. Dalton now works with veterans organizations teaching de-escalation techniques. Crawford declined to participate in this documentary. Jeremiah Martin continues to live in his home, surrounded by family, friends, and a community that finally sees him for who he always was, a quiet hero who never stopped serving. He is 71 years old. "I didn't do anything special," he says. "I just tried to live with dignity." Turns out, that's revolutionary.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting and beautiful stories lined up for you already, so click on the image showing on your screen to watch the next one.